Tony D and Little Joan in the background, and this is your screenwriter's take on Horizon, an American Saga, starring Kevin Costner, Luke Wilson, Sam Worthington, and 99 cast members in total. And I don't know why they made this. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. Links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys. Books 1 through 14. Available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Okay. So, I like Kevin Costner. I like a bunch of his movies. I like that he put his own money into this. And I was kind of psyched to see it because Razor Fist and John Nolte over at Breitbart kind of recommended it. But I have to bet against the Razor on this one. Oh my God. This movie's so long and boring. It's so long and boring. Now look, I have the attention span of a fruit fly, but I also see a lot of movies, so I can deal with a movie that's long if it tells me something, has a story that's moving forward. There are so many freaking characters in this thing, and they're jumping back and forth in various ways. This is all one giant part of Act 1, and it's 3 hours long. Too much. There's just too much going on here. It's just too much. You know? It's hard to keep track of everything that's going on in a movie. You know, I appreciate the authenticity of it because it feels authentic, except for the fact, did people in 1859 use the term indigenous? Oh, the indigenous. It didn't sit well with me. It doesn't sound right. Maybe it's true. They said indigenous in 1859. I don't know. I've seen a lot of movies where they call them Indians or Injuns or savages or worse. Okay, you're gonna call them indigenous? That sounds like a modern word. That sounds like a politically correct word that shouldn't be in the movie at all. So that was the one red flag in the dialogue. Now, in terms of the stuff that actually happens, it seems very realistic, but it didn't seem like well, it didn't seem like it had it seemed like I was getting 17 act 1s and no act 2s or 3s. Definitely no act 3s. Maybe a little bit of act 2 in here, but holy crap, 3 hours and 1 minute long. I was dying by the end of this movie. I was begging for the end to show up. Just the end. And then, you know, again, as always, I'm doing a non-spoiler review first, but there's nothing to spoil here. There's really nothing to spoil here. I could tell you a bunch of things that happened in this movie. It's not going to spoil anything. Because I can't imagine in the next, I think, 5 movies that he intends to make with this, that's going to be anything different in it, other than what I saw. There's a lot of Western stuff. A lot of Western stuff. Lots of Western stuff. A bunch of scenes. It's all Western. Sounds very authentic. Jumps from territory to territory. Jumps from Montana to California, I think California, San Jose or something, Kansas and one other, Wyoming, jumping all over the place. Not really, and introducing me to many different Indian tribes. I appreciate all the research that went in it, but my God, man, where's the story? Where's the story? Look, Dances with Wolves was a little bit long, but it's centered around Kevin Costner's character, so I could kind of follow it. Man, I was losing track of who the hell was in this movie. Look, You know, I didn't have that problem with Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings moves well. Hamlet by Kenneth Branagh. Long movie. Moves great. Moves like lightning. This movie, it's not a laborious pace, but it's not a pace that's quick enough for its runtime. And I didn't want to see like Silverado. I didn't want to see, I did want to see something authentic, but I don't care about most of the characters in this movie. I feel bad for some of them. Like, oh, that sucks. Sucks to be you, but I don't feel anything for most of these characters yet. The wind-up is arduous. Friggin' arduous. Now, maybe by the next movie, things start happening, but, I thought Variety and Hollywood Reporter was being very disingenuous when they said this, but it's kind of accurate. Kevin Costner proves that television isn't right for movies. This is a mini-series, a 3-hour section of it that's going to be back in it. Who's going to see this? Who's got the time? There were a lot of other things I could have done tonight. And my date and I saw this, and we were so tired. We were exhausted by the end of it. Just exhausted. We went to the movies, and admittedly, we went late. We went to a 9:40 show, which means we're not going to get to see frame one until about 10:10, because there's about a half an hour of stuff ahead of it. Although, now that I think about it, I don't think they showed us. I don't think they showed us any trailers, which was good. But holy F. I mean, we got out of there at 1 a.m. 1 a.m. And we were exhausted mentally because we're trying to follow the damn movie, but there's just too many people. And so the impact of all these people, it just doesn't hit. It just doesn't hit. Kevin Costner doesn't show up until, God, I think like an hour into the movie. It felt like an hour at least. That's a long way to wait for Kevin Costner in a movie that he's starring and directing it. And he's not bad. No one in the movie is giving a bad performance. It's just that there's too much of it. And when you have a movie that's 3 hours and a minute long, and you have scenes of women washing clothes, or a scene of some guys being peeping toms to a naked woman, those scenes are okay, I guess, in another movie, but in a movie that is 3 hours and 1 minute, it felt like you were luxuriating in like showing all these little tidbits of detail that weren't particularly, like, I didn't feel like that scene that I just mentioned with the naked woman, even though it was like, ooh, boobies, and we did see a little bit of boob, it's like, that's it. What is the purpose of the scene? There were characters that the characters in that scene are set up to be kind of mean and kind of like, oh, these guys are going to be trouble. There's no payoff in this movie for that. Now, there might be a payoff in the next movie, but what that's coming out in a few months. I'm supposed to now go see that and then get the payoff in that movie. You're out of your mind. I can't possibly see the next installment of this. No. There's no way. I have a life to lead, Kevin Costner. I have a life. Most of it's complaining about movies, but it's a life nonetheless. I don't know what he's thinking here. It's if he had put this out as some kind of mini-series, right? Put it out in installments, sure, why not? But to put it out in theaters, there's a reason why this movie's not making any money. Here's what I would have done to correct some of this problem. The first thing I would have done is I would have made the movie shorter. 2 hours. tops. Cut it back to 2 hours. Jam in another movie if you have to. You're not doing me any favors by keeping me in the theater 3 hours. You're just not. It's too long to sit there in one position. It's too long. You know, the guys defending this movie, Michael Rooker, who's in it, and others are saying, oh, this is like, you know, you can't be like the TikTok generation. Excuse me. People defending the movie. How long are movies normally in the old days? 90 minutes to 2 hours, tops. 2 hours was absolute top. Absolute tops. You can't make a 3-hour movie unless the thing friggin' churns, or you give me a payoff that's worth sitting there for 3 hours. Lord of the Rings, worth it. Hamlet, Kenneth Branagh, worth it. This movie, it's not that it's bad. It ends with a montage of here's what's coming up in movie 2. To which I was like, oh, God, man, just end it. When you're sitting in a movie theater and you're just going, please, just end this movie. That's not good. That's not good. You know, maybe Razor and John Nolte have the endurance to sit there for 3 hours and luxuriate in this. And look, again, it was very authentic. I like that. I mean, the way they do the Indian tribes, probably the best I've seen. But I could have seen that in a shorter time period. Maybe you could have done like a Clint Eastwood thing, and done one from the perspective of the Indians, and one from the perspective of, say, the soldiers, one from the perspective of the settlers, and one from the perspective of the cowboys. I mean, there's so many characters. Forget about knowing the Indian characters. Forget about it. I mean, that's not in English, so that's subtitled. I'm supposed to remember which guy said something to the chief, and then the other guy, the other brother who's not, not obeying the chief. Like, I'm supposed to remember all that for the next movie. Not for this movie, for the next movie. I mean, there's all these big scenes. No, Kevin Costner. No, too long. Too long. I don't like long movies, number one. And I am biased. But I'm also biased for Westerns. I like Westerns. And they don't have to be all shoot-em-ups like Silverado, which I do like. I really like Old Henry and a few others. Unforgiven. But man, you exhaust me in this movie. I'm tired just thinking about this damn movie. Great on costumes and everything else. Although I gotta say, throwing in machine fabrics in 1859 always throws me a little, because I don't know what's legit and what's not from that era. But that's picking. That's really picking. But I needed something more here. I needed like a roadmap to figure out these characters. In its defense, it feels very authentic. But it would be very authentic if you had a movie, for instance, about a cop stakeout and the cop spent hours sitting in the car. That would be authentic and boring. This seems very authentic. It also feels incredibly boring. I mean, the gunfight was cool. That was cool. The boobs were cool. But it just seems like there's too many characters, too many people. You can't keep track of them all. How's this all going to come together? The only guys I'm remembering are the guys that are the celebrities. Those are the only guys I'm going to remember. Kevin Costner's son does a pretty good performance, by the way. I thought he was pretty good. The opening pitch is very dramatic, but things go, in terms of the events, kind of slow down. They pick up at the gunfight but, you know, it's a lot of fallout from it. And I get it, shades of gray and everything, but my God, man, there are hundreds of shades of gray in this. So I cannot recommend this movie. Sorry. I don't think it's going to get better looking at it later, because, quite frankly, I'm just exhausted from seeing this thing. Friggin' exhausted. I wanted to go to bed right after it. So let's break it down in the spoilers. So that was the non-spoiler review. Here come the spoilers. But again, I could tell you every single spoiler in the movie, and I kind of just told you a couple, but it's not going to matter to you. It's probably not going to matter to you, but here we go. First act, second act, third act. It's all first act, maybe a little bit of second. I mean, first act is, I guess you could say, it's all about this town they're building called Horizon, and it starts with the surveyors and how they pick, you know, they're surveying the land, and the local tribe is watching them, and they get all butchered, right? They butcher the surveyors, but the town gets built anyway. Townspeople show up, they build a town, and again, the locals burn it to the ground. And that's the most brutal, that's a brutal scene. That's in the first act with Kevin Costner's son. It's very brutal. It's pretty realistic. But so what? Like, you're starting the movie with this brutal attack, and I don't know any of these characters, but you're killing them left and right. I don't know any of these people yet. Okay, it sucks that they're being killed. I feel bad for them, but I hardly knew them. They killed this violinist in this one scene, and you're just like, oh man, that sucks. But again, I didn't know who he was. They're kind of killing a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people die in that scene. Am I supposed to know any of these people? A bunch of people go up into the hills while the rest of the town gets wiped out. And it's like, okay, am I supposed to root for them? I don't know who to root for. So then you get the fallout from the attack when the army shows up. So some of the people go with the army, and they're going to continue to build, but they also hire a bunch of guys to just murder Indians. They say, go up into the hills and kill these guys who just killed us. But of course, they're being paid by the scalp. They're just going to find eventually they get frustrated, and they just find a tribe of Indians to butcher. That's at the end of the movie. That's in the third act, I guess, if you can even call it that. In between, there's this storyline with a family called the Sykes. A woman attempts to murder her father, I think. I think she's the daughter who may have been raped by him and then had a kid by him. I'm not 100% sure, but she escapes with the kid after shooting the father a bunch of times. He survives, and then he sends his two sons after her. That's when they run into Kevin Costner, one of them, the murderous one, and Kevin Costner ends up killing him in a brutal scene. Again, that's a good scene. I like that scene, but it takes forever to get to. There's this whole wind up with a prostitute that he ends up traveling with, and it's like, is there going to be some payoff with this prostitute? Is there going to be some payoff? And there's not, really. There's not. Later in the movie, she abandons him. Is she going to come back? I don't really care. I don't really care. I know things about the prostitute, but they're not interesting things. They're just things. I know stuff about Kevin Costner. They're not interesting things, but they're things. I know stuff about all the Sykes. Are they interesting? No. I don't know why they're a murderous bunch of asshats. That's a problem. I don't know what motivates them other than revenge. So if I had more motivation for some of these characters, then yeah, okay, I could get behind it. The only thing I know is someone printed a bunch of flyers about Horizon, sold a bunch of land, and that's it. And everybody's lying about who they are, and somehow in 1859, even though everybody's living in the frontier, somehow people can still track you down anyway. Like, I don't know how people track anyone down without fingerprints and computer stuff. Like, okay, I guess you just didn't bother to change your look and your clothes at all. You just changed your name and hope, wow, hope nobody runs into me that recognizes me. So, I mean, they had hair dye. Why not change your hair? Why not avoid people if you're really trying to hide? I don't know. So there's a lot of murders, you know, at the first town that the Indians burned down, and then later there's some more, but like it's not coming together for me. They follow the story of the wife who survives the Indian attack with her daughter, and she ends up moving to the fort where she falls in love with the lieutenant, Sam Worthington, and we don't even get the payoff for that. Like, it's obvious she's in love with him, and they're going to get married, and, I mean, that was a thing in the Wild West, right? Your spouse dies. If you're halfway decent looking, you're probably going to find another spouse because you got to survive. So, you know, and life was cheap. I mean, and then you got the story with the Indians, right? So you got these guys who were hired to go hunt Indians, and then they eventually settle upon this tribe that has nothing to do with the people who with the Indians who committed the murder. They wait for all the braves to leave, and then they go in there and just massacre everybody. And then there's one kid who's their lookout who has to watch for the braves to make sure they don't come back, and he nearly blows it. But again, I'm giving it more coherence than it has. It's just random scenes. And I've seen that in the movie, right? The idea that, okay, some people wronged you, but then you take your aggression out on somebody else wrongly. Okay. See, there's the Indians burning everything down. But to some extent, from a movie audience perspective, these guys are justified. The Indians friggin' were brutal, man. Everybody in this is brutal. Except the English couple, who are meant to be some sort of, I don't know, comic relief. There's Kevin Costner confronting that dude. The indigenous, as they call them. I mean, they didn't use the word Indian or savage that I remember. That's the kind of language I'd expect in a movie like this. That's supposed to be authentic, or I would expect them to say the names of the tribes, you know, for the people who were in the know. Oh no, the Chippewa are here, or whatever. The language regarding them didn't feel authentic. Now, the scenes with them talking in native tongue were pretty authentic. And the arguments they were having, well, if you attack the whites, you'll bring more of them, and then we're all gonna die. Yeah, I guess. But what's the point of doing this movie? Like, what's the point? I don't even understand. You're just showing people living and dying in the Wild West. Not really the Wild West, but, you know, during the time of the frontier. Okay, it sucked and people died. Point taken. Point taken. You made it look very authentic, but how many generations are we going to go through with this? You know? Are we going to see more and more of this? Are we going to go through 100 years of this? Are we going to get to, you know, 50 years down the road at least, when the railroads have come through and most of the Indians are on reservations, and I don't know. What are we doing? I just don't get this movie. I mean, I love Westerns. I love them. But this, I don't love. Too big, too broad, too ambitious, and not giving me the payoff I want. I want some kind of payoff. Listen, it doesn't have to be, again, I'm not saying it has to be the payoff of some like bubblegum Western like Silverado. Obviously, that's a movie that it's just a fun Western movie. But like something like Old Henry, something like Unforgiven, something like, I don't know. I mean, A Fistful of Dollars, stuff like that. That's not going to be this movie, but give me a coherent narrative that I can follow. Okay, you're going to jump around to all these places. How about just jumping around to 3 places? That's usually the rule of 3. Don't go more than 3. More than 3 I can't handle. And if you're going to do that jumping around, you should establish everybody early and who the main characters are. Right? So it should have started with the guys who are going to get burned out by the Indians, then Kevin Costner and the guys chasing him, and then Luke Wilson's guy. Like, I should have seen them all in the first 15 minutes of the movie, and then you can cut back and forth between them, and then give me a hint at how they're related. What are you going to tell me 4 movies from now? I'm already out, dude. I'm already out. It was too much. It was too much. You're luxuriating in, and again, it's not like the performances are bad or the sets or anything like that. Some of it looks amazing. But I'm bored. I can't get past that I'm bored. I can't get past that I don't know where I am. Like, there's too much information coming at me. There's too many characters. I can't keep track of them all. Who's this? Why is he here? What's going on? I don't have 6 movies to figure all this out. I just don't. I don't have that kind of time. And you're talking 5 other movies, 3 hours apiece. That's 18 hours. What am I, a marathon? Come on. I don't want to watch that much. I wouldn't watch that much if it was Lord of the Rings. 3 movies is the rule. Give me 3. You can't do it in 3. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're going to do for 5 more movies. I really don't. Are you going to show me something different? You pretty much covered it all. Gunfights, Indians, people on horseback, people getting shot, people dying. I mean, it was all there. What else? What new things are you going to show me? Oh, another guy's going to get shot. Well, good, I guess. Look, let's make an agreement, Hollywood. How about no more 3-hour movies? How about let's start with that. Let's start with a time limit. You're not doing anyone any favors. The movies will be cheaper if you stick to a 2-hour window. And here's what I've learned as a guy who did screenplays, as a guy who did comic books, comic strips, and novellas. When you're forced into a time limit or a page limit, or in the case of the comic strip, 3 panels, you're really forced to advance the story quickly. I just did a big, giant advancement. You're going to see it tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Friday on Tales of Pizza. Big changes in Tales of Pizza. I scripted it at 3 panels. Vig may make it 4 or 5. But it's possible to do. I didn't need to see the wind-up of Kevin Costner coming into town. I just didn't need to see that. Like, it could have started with him already in town and running into the prostitute. I didn't need to see her wind up or much of it. I could have seen that later when she comes back to the cabin where she lives. I didn't need to see a long scene of her being chastised, and then she comes back later and gets chastised again by the woman she lives with, and no explanation of why she's living there other than I guess she was getting money from her, and then she's tied into a completely different thing that, you know, it's very convoluted too, and not very clear. So, you know, you can make the characters explain themselves. You could give us a voiceover. You could do a crawl, something. Give me a sign, Kevin Costner. What the F is this movie? Or you can continue to make it long and ponderous and hope that I'm going to sit through 18 hours of this stuff in the movie theater. Good luck with that. And that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Joan. Check us out on the other websites that I can't mention on YouTube, but the links are below. The green site, the orange site, and the black site. I'll be back with more videos later. Today is the live stream where we do it live. We're going to do a July 4th live stream because I can't do one on Sunday. I thought it would be fun. I hope you will join us. We'll see you in the next one and in the live stream.